Welcome to the Data's role in shaping TDM marketing programs. I'd like to let everyone know that this session is being sponsored by the Transportation Demand Management Institute, or TDMI. My name is Ramfos. I'm the chairman of TDMI. And we're in partnership with the ACT conference here in San Antonio to present this program. And with us today, we have, besides myself, there are three panelists. And our first panelist is Lisa Buchanan. She's the director of transportation planning consultants with Steer Davies Gleave, based in their headquarters in London. And she's increasingly spending her time delivering projects here in the United States. She has an undergraduate degree in town planning and a master's in transport planning, both from Oxford Torx University. She's an expert in travel behavior change with 18 years of experience in developing and implementing programs to reduce car use. And she's advised different levels of governments, mostly in the UK and also in Australia and the US, as well as private sector clients, and has a track record in successfully delivering sustained levels of modal shift away from the car. And she's currently head of planning at Steer Davies Gleave and leads their TDM efforts globally. And next to Lisa is Rachelle Waterman. Rachelle studied public relations at Durham College and has worked in marketing, PR, and communications for hospitals, charities, and not-for-profits. In 2009, she made the transition to working in the field of TDM. And currently, she's the marketing manager for Smart Commute in North Toronto, Ontario. That's in Canada, right? And she also works as the chair of the Smart Commute and Metrolinks Marketing, Events, and Promotion Subcommittee, where she uses her expertise in communications and brand management to help implement and promote region-wide sustainable transportation events and campaigns. Rachelle is also an active member of the Toronto Centre for Active Transportation Engage and Inspire Committee, where she helps to lead the organization's marketing strategy and communications plan. And next to Rachelle is Ryan Ellis. He serves as Principal Program Specialist with ARC, or the Atlanta Regional Commission. And he's working within the agency's Transportation Access and Mobility Division. His work centers on the implementation of travel reduction programs, such as the Regional Guaranteed Ride Home Program, and mode-based promotions like the Bike to Work Challenge. He's celebrating his 6th year in TDM. He's previously served as a project manager with the ERS Corporation's TDM practice, which provides employer and commuter-based outreach services for the Clean Air Campaign in the state of Georgia. Additionally, Ryan has also worked with the International Business Machines Corporation, or IBM, and Market Source LLC of Georgia. So I'd like everyone to welcome our panelists. I wanted to say that this is their debut here at ACT. None of these folks have presented before at ACT, so I'd like everyone to be kind to them. And I know you're a great crowd. So, but before we get started, I just wanted to just mention a few things about TDMI. TDMI was incorporated back in 1982 as a non-profit 501c3 charity, and it's organized and based in California. It was originally part of ACT, and currently it's composed of four board officers and 11 board trustees. TDMI split away from ACT just a few years ago, but we've reconstituted our efforts. And the overall mission is to establish TDMI as an international TDM sustainable transport umbrella group that facilitates information sharing as well as innovation in TDM. And essentially, we're looking to provide educational opportunities through a lecture series such as today. So we are recording today's session, and it will be placed up on the TDMI website. And we're also looking to compile existing research on TDM and house it in one location for easy reference. This is a global organization. We have members from the UK as well as Australia, and we're also looking to expand into Canada. And essentially, we're looking to support the TDM initiatives. The website is at transportation2.org. There are resource links to existing research on that site. There's also a social media platform for TDM developments, issues, and ideas. And there's also a new module that we're going to be unveiling later this month. We actually introduced it yesterday during the lead professional development session, which is going to provide information to developers, employers, as well as property managers on TDM professionals that can provide TDM expertise for lead building certification. So that's going to be coming up soon. Before we have Lisa come up to the podium, I just wanted to say a few things about today's session. For those of you operating TDM programs, you probably collect some type of data, whether it's from your program participants, employers, perhaps it's program sponsors, or other entities that you're dealing with on a daily basis. And some of you may collect in-depth data, particularly quantitative data from maybe large surveys that you're doing. Maybe it's their phone surveys, maybe they're written surveys, maybe they're surveys that you do online, maybe it's data that you're capturing as folks are applying to your programs. Maybe it's focus groups that you might be doing. But I guess the bottom line is that a lot of this data, if you try and compile it into one, or trying to synthesize it into one package, it's really become to be known as what we call big data. And essentially it's a collection of large data sets that are complex and difficult to process. If you're trying to combine a lot of these applications, maybe using an Excel spreadsheet may not cut it. You may have to use something a little bit more sophisticated. One example might be processing real-time roadway traffic data. It comes from a lot of different sources, and trying to get that data into one set of data may require a little bit of footwork to get it there. This type of data is not new. You hear about big data. It's been used in elections, the national elections last year between President Obama and Mitt Romney. There was a lot of data that was collected in terms of how the parties could target potential voters and what the likelihood would be to vote based on demographics. Consumers are targeted by retailers through big data that they collect. So whenever you walk into the store, if you go online, they're collecting information about you. And many of you may have heard the story about a father who got very upset with Target because his daughter was receiving direct mail about pregnancy information, and his daughter was underage, and he basically went to the store and said, you know, I'm really upset with you folks because you're sending my daughter information on pregnancy, and you know, she's underage. And the store basically said, well, look, sir, we have information that she's been purchasing products from our store that relates to pregnancy, and that's how he found out his daughter was pregnant. So, so that's how deep it goes. So the big data is out there, people are using it, and so today what we're trying to do is give you some ideas on how you can take some of the data that you have and use it for your marketing messages, how to communicate with the public, whether it's an employer, whether it's the general public, and you could use this information to do a region-wide campaign, or you could actually do targeted campaigns at a site or maybe along a corridor. So our speakers today are going to share their experiences with you. I also have some experiences I'll share with you from the DC market. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Lisa. And then we're going to hold questions to the end. And what we'll do is, if you have a question, we'd like you to project. We're trying to record the session, and I will repeat the question. And then this way we can record everything. So with that, take it away, Lisa.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick. There's a few people stood at the back still on it. There are 3 seats here at the front. I know people are quite sitting in the front. Let me just find my presentation. about what I could talk about in the session, I've been contacted, I think, because he was keen to have some international perspective in the session, and we talked about...
Can't hear you.
Okay. We talked about various ideas that I could perhaps come and talk about, and the one that we thought might be the most interesting was a European project that the company I work for, Still of Sleep, have undertaken, but I haven't worked on myself. People are still standing up. Can you hear me now? No?
You're competing with the air.
Okay, I'm really shouting, but I guess I'll keep shouting much louder. So, I'm going to talk about a European project. Can you hear me now? A European project. It was a 3-year project funded by the Intelligent Energy Europe monies. It was called Segment. All European projects are given these interesting titles, so segmented marketing for energy efficient transport. Overall, it aimed to assess the influence of bespoke travel marketing focused at life change moments. So I think we're all familiar with the idea that behaviour change can be more successful, or our attempts at influencing behaviour change can be more accessible at life change moments, i.e. people changing schools, changing work, moving house, and so on. And the big question it asked was, could market segmentation cost effectively achieve shift towards sustainable transportation? So as I said, a 3-year project, there were 6 partner cities. All European projects need to have different partners from across the continent involved in the project. They're listed there: London, Sofia, Utrecht in the Netherlands, Almada in Portugal, Gdynia in Poland, and Munich in Germany, and also the academic partner on board was Aberdeen University. The lead partner was the London Borough of Hounslow, so that's within the west of London, and they were our client for the work that we did. The first stage in the project was that each of the 6 partner cities had to choose the life change moments that they wanted to focus on. So if we look at Hounslow at the top here, they wanted to focus on new employees, people starting or switching jobs, those starting or changing schools, and a really key target in the UK at least is between people going from primary to secondary school at about the age of 11, and also people with health issues. So again, there's a big drive in the UK at the moment about people getting fitter and healthier, and more money being put in the system to support that, so people going to their health centres wanting advice. You can see there though, each of the partner cities chose 3 different life moments that they wanted to focus their project on. The next stage of the project was that Aberdeen University undertook surveys with each of those segments. So within each of the 6 cities, within each of the 3 life change moments, so if you like, there were 18 different surveys undertaken. The sample size, the achieved sample size they wanted to reach was 300 per segment, and the surveys were carried out late 2011. Aberdeen University analysed those results, and they collated all of the respondents into 5 different segments, which they then categorised, which they would use to drive different marketing campaigns. So each of those 5 segments were present across all of the 6 partner cities, but in different proportions. So in the UK it might have been 8% of one segment versus 28% in another location. To try and explain this a bit more clearly, I'm just going to give you the example of the Hounslow employee target group. So all of the staff who work for the local jurisdiction, Hounslow Borough Council, were invited to take part in the pilot survey. They had just under 300 valid responses. Initially, the behaviour change moment was intended to be new employees who just started working with the council, but actually during the time of all this, the council decided to introduce parking charges. They thought, well, that would be an interesting one to take too. So not a traditional life change moment, but something that was really going to be forcing people to think about their travel. The survey designed by Aberdeen University included questions about their current travel patterns, how they were travelling, but also their attitudes to the way they travel currently, but their attitudes to other transport as well. And these questions were what put people into one of these 5 segments. So the segments shown here, the greater segment were the malcontented motorists, just under 1/3 of respondents in the Hounslow employee group. Aspiring environmentalists were next, again 1/3. Then the car complacents at 23%, the ready and willing 11%, and the die-hard drivers. Now hopefully those names give you some clues as to the die-hard drivers are going to be really hard to reach, so we're not going to focus much energy there, but the ready and willing or the inspiring environmentalists might be groups that we might start working with first. As I say, each of those groups are very different across the 6 partner cities. For each of these 5 segments, just showing some general statistics here on their levels of things like car ownership and bike ownership, but more importantly their attitudes to travelling by other modes. And it was by doing this that each of the cities were able to think about who they wanted to target, who they felt was more likely to change within their segments. So here in Hounslow, they knew they wanted to target the car complacents, the aspiring environmentalists, and the ready and willing, who were more receptive to the idea of trialling different modes. The next stage was once Aberdeen University had completed that exercise in the segmentation against each of the life change moments in each of the partner cities. All of the partner cities came together to a workshop that was held in Portugal, which we facilitated. And the idea was that they each had to create a marketing brief. What was the person that they could give to a creative agency that they were trying to reach out to? And this is just an example here of the inspiring environmentalists as created by Hounslow, and the pictures there they put together were just to try and give that marketing agency an idea of the person it is they felt this person was. And then here a detailed description. I appreciate it's too small for you to read up on the screen, but the idea of John is 33, he's just started working at a job in the Golden Mile out in West London, how he travels to work, how he feels about how he travels to work, whether he uses his car during the day at work, just to try and build up a picture of the sort of person they were trying to target. So each of the cities created these different marketing briefs for their 3 different life change moments. Just to try and give you a flavour of how that was then kind of taken forward, clearly I don't want to take 18 scenarios forward, so Hounslow created 3 campaigns around schools, around health and employees. And I'm just going to take you through a little bit of the health campaign. And here at the bottom, they highlighted as they took these segments through what the main motivations of those that they would be targeting would be. And fitness came up in 2 places. I've realised I was told not to move, this is being taped. There we go, and there we go. So in 2 cases, they realised, that helped them identify, well, if these people are going to be motivated by fitness, then this is the group that we want to target. They then set about designing a campaign designed for sort of active car owners with an influence also on status seekers. Now, rather confusingly, you'll see that they changed the names. What each of the 6 partner cities did was they took the original 6 segments, 5 segments. Not in all cases were the people present within each of those segments. So in some cases they then sort of diluted the segments to make them more relevant for their partner cities. But essentially these people were people who liked walking, they could see the benefit of walking and cycling, but they just didn't do it at the moment. It wasn't something that was part of their normal life. So it was felt that reducing car use would make them feel good, and they were likely to lead to changes around travelling around their local areas. So a walk and cycle referral program was developed that GPs, doctors were going to prescribe to people who came to them for whatever ailments they might come to them for. There was a standard package and an enhanced package, and it utilises an existing resource that Hounslow already had, and this was a piece of work we'd previously done for them, creating a Hounslow Travel Active website. The address is there, hounslowtravelactive.org. Do have a look at that. There's lots of different elements on that whereby people can challenge themselves around their aspirations about doing more in the way of active travel. They can also see cycle routes or walking routes that other people within their community have recommended as a good way from getting to place A to place B, and comments on those routes. So this was a really good resource that Hounslow wanted to tap into through this project. Patients would register that and they could return the postcards if they were interested in more specific walk or cycle training support, which was also available. The walk or cycle trainer then visited that person at home, so a really intense support being given here to people they felt would make that change to walking or cycling more. Individually, people set their goals on the website, so again on the Hounslow Travel Active website. They were also given active travel packs, so pedometers for people likely to push on cycling or cycle computers, just so they could see the motivation of actually how many steps they're making or how many bike miles they were achieving. And they received follow-up phone calls at different stages after the advice was initially given or the cycle training, for example, had been delivered. These were an example of some of the campaign marketing materials that were used just for this health campaign in Hounslow. They incorporate this Change for Life. There's a big national health brand in the UK around the idea of people are trying to change for life, which isn't just about active transportation, but also about healthy eating choices and so on. In terms of the progress, it was targeted just through 10 different doctor surgeries in Hounslow. Initially, it was launched during Fight Week of last year. It ran until March of this year and signposted through other services. Just wanted to share some of the key lessons that Hounslow learned through using this approach of segmenting and the campaigns. The first of all, and I can really understand this from my own work, was that reaching the target segments was not as straightforward as hoped. And I think this was true across schools and employers and health. So the actual campaign itself worked, but actually it was driven by different reasons. So in this case, it was that really it was driven by how engaged the GPs were in wanting to dish out this advice. They weren't then just giving it out to the people that were maybe the aspiring environmentalists, say. They were giving it out to anyone they spoke to that they felt would benefit from the programme. So the reality of having broken everyone down became quite difficult in then getting the GP, who was the person we were relying on to give that advice, just to give it to one group. My view is that's actually not that big a problem. If it's going to be good and healthy for people to do this program, it doesn't really matter which segment they're in, but it was a lesson they learned. The second lesson was segmenting against the one-size-fits-all campaign, and again this was on a similar vein but related to the money that was spent. So quite a lot of the upfront costs in this project was around doing the segmentation exercises on some quite small segments. So back to the 6 cities, the 3 life change moments, each the 18 segments, that was 18 different sets of marketing campaigns, and that in itself was really quite expensive for the reward that was got back at the end of the day. And finally, relating to data, I think they did feel that the independence of Aberdeen University, having collected the data and analysed the data, opened not just the minds of the marketing and communications folks within the jurisdiction, but also the agencies they were then briefing to work on it, that they needed to open their eyes to a different way of being. That I think local jurisdictions, at least in the UK, very much have their very clear and set ideas on comms, and they weren't willing to open those ideas to actually different groups that they wanted to be able to target. So this was actually really helpful for many of the jurisdictions to see this. In terms of next steps for the programme, it was a 3-year project. Each of the cities felt that they could answer the question that had been beneficial. The idea of segmenting and developing campaigns off the segmentation was successful, but going forward they needed to look at how some of the more successful campaigns, each was very different within each of the cities, could be remarketed and achieve better results. Some of the local cities didn't externally commission their marketing, their branding materials, and they felt that would have improved the quality of the materials in some cases. They want to consolidate the work into fewer, larger campaigns, and also look at other life change moments which they felt they could tap into. I really encourage people to go and look at this project website, the segmentproject.eu, where there's a heap of, this is what European projects are really good at, about making sure that actually all of the results and stages are well recorded and can be shared. So there is a transferability report which shows how different cities benefit and what they feel the lessons are for other cities who might be interested. Golden question segmentation tool, but that includes the questions that Aberdeen University asked, and the segment toolkit. So the examples more detailed than I've been able to give you now about the best practice and what was learned. So if you are interested, really useful, I think, source of information. And thank you.
everybody. I hope you all can hear me. I kind of woke up with a sore throat this morning. Can everybody hear me fine? Back? Yes? Okay, great. So I'm here to talk to you today about marketing and data analytics. I'm going to be speaking on the TDMI's approach to influencing behavior change. I'll give you a quick background on what is Smart Commute, why companies partner with our organization, and the actual program implementation, so the operational versus marketing, how we go into it through our site assessments, surveys, the results that we've gotten, and the next steps that we're going to take. So Smart Commute is a program of Metrolinx, which is our regional transportation authority, as well as the greater, as the municipalities in the greater Toronto and Hamilton area. There's 13 TMAs across the region. We work with more than 300 employers and more than 670,000 commuters to help them explore single commute options like carpooling, taking public transit, walking, cycling, and telework options. Our goal is to ease gridlock, improve air quality, and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions while making commuting less expensive and also more enjoyable. All of this helps us support Metrolinx's regional transportation plan called the Big Move. So there's 13 TMAs in the GTHA. The GTHA is a contiguous urban region that's composed of some of Ontario's largest cities and metropolitan areas by population. The transportation infrastructure in each area differs according to population sizes. In denser areas, commuters are provided with multiple travel options, all which can be seen as relatively feasible and efficient. For example, in a city like Toronto, using the public transportation system is considered to be the norm due to the number of services provided by multiple agencies. In a more rural area, where public transit is less developed, a smart commute option like carpooling is usually seen as more feasible and also more comfortable. Therefore, land use, population density, and availability of travel options in each region plays a huge role in the work that a TMA is contracted to do. So why do companies partner with Smart Commute? There are a number of reasons why a company would contact Smart Commute for its services. Smart Commute's core objective is to change the travel behaviors of commuters and essentially reduce the amount of driver-alone trips people take to and from work. Companies and organizations realize the value in this, and they contact Smart Commute to help support their CSR, their ROI, as well as develop their recruitment and retention strategies. So once a company contacts Smart Commute, the program implementation and data analysis begins. During our first meeting, we interview our contact, whom we refer to as the champion, about what they're looking to get out of this partnership. We want to know why they contacted us, what is their primary reason for providing the Smart Commute program to their employees, and what are their goals and how can the TDM program help achieve those goals. So the first step is completing a site assessment. So we address the needs of the workplace, and then we take a more in-depth look at the actual infrastructure and capabilities of the site. So our team will conduct a site assessment, which provides a comprehensive evaluation of the work environment and surrounding area. The site assessment is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is the questionnaire, which examines the workplace profile. In this section, we look at the type of industry we'll be servicing, as well as the specifics regarding the employee population, including the percentage of male staff versus female, on-site versus off-site, and seasonal versus full-time staff. We also inquire about the parking situation, human resources, and local business travel. This type of information is extremely valuable for a TMA because it helps us determine the feasibility of implementing and promoting certain TDM programs. For example, if Part 1 tells us that employees have access to free parking, we wouldn't necessarily implement and promote a carpool parking program based on reducing travel costs. Instead, we would review the following sections and figure out what barriers commuters were trying to overcome and base the program around those. Part B of the site assessment is the interview. This is also an extremely valuable portion of the assessment. The interview focuses on the workplace culture. Is there a dress code? How do employees receive communications? Is there a welcome package made to new employees? We also take a look at the participation levels with regards to environmental events and programming. Being able to assess the interests of a workforce helps us determine the baseline involvement rate, which can impact the level of marketing that we decide to undertake. Part 2 also examines the current commute capabilities of the workplace. To help implement and promote a successful program, we need to know the types of information and resources that are already made available to the employees. We take a look at what the workplace offers with respect to transit incentives, travel information, as well as the accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists. The last part of the site assessment is part C, which is the site visit. We find that this is one of the most valuable pieces of the site assessment because it actually connects the operational side of the TDM program with the marketing side. The site visit is conducted by Smart Commute to gather data about the surroundings of the workplace and the type of amenities it already has on site. Knowing the infrastructure of the area helps us not only determine what types of programs are feasible for the partner, but also what types of programs make the biggest impact to the commuters. After the site assessment is completed, Smart Commute uses the data that we've collected to create a comprehensive baseline survey, which is targeted specifically to the partner based on their communicated needs. The baseline survey has 4 main objectives. The first, we want to find out what the current mode split of the employee commute is. The second is to find out the employee's willingness to change their travel habits. 3 is to learn about the perceived barriers and obstacles that are preventing commuters from using Smart Commute options. And 4, we want to determine what are the best ways to incentivize commuters to encourage them to use these sustainable modes. So, when doing this baseline survey, we send it to the champion, and they distribute it to their employees and tenants. They can do this electronically, by paper. A lot of times we do run into roadblocks. One of the main challenges we encounter is a lack of awareness of the actual Smart Commute program. Since the survey asks relatively private questions, like where do you live, what are your work hours, employees may not always feel comfortable completing it. To overcome this obstacle, Smart Commute has to work closely with the champion to make sure that employees know who we are, why we want their information, and what we plan on doing with it after we gather it. Until we have the chance to embed ourselves into the organization, we're essentially a third-party organization. We're basically strangers. To get past this perception, we host a number of events where employees can meet with our team to discuss their current travel modes and learn about how Smart Commute can make their commute faster, cleaner, and better. These events also help us with the second challenge of obtaining a representative sample. In order to develop a TDM program that services an entire workplace, we need to ensure that the data we collect is an accurate estimate of the characteristics of the whole population. We sometimes encounter problems with this due to the type of partner we're working with. For example, we've recently partnered with a large shopping center, and one of the things that we've had to do is go store to store to actually survey people face to face to find out their current commute modes and their barriers. This was obviously a labor-intensive process, but it helped to ensure that we gathered data from the entire mall population, not just the full-time corporate staff. So after we do the baseline survey, which is usually after about a 1 to 2 week period, our program managers complete an analysis and work plan using the collected data. The baseline survey provides us with in-depth information about the current mode split of the commute, top barriers, and top motivators. We use this data to create a customized work plan for the employer, as well as an introduction to different target markets that we can then begin to serve. So the first step after we prepare the work plan is we begin to isolate the commute modes. So we reviewed the site assessment to determine which programs would be most feasible. After we look at the feasibility, we use the data in the baseline survey, specifically the barriers and the motivators section, to find out what programs would give Smart Commute and the partner the biggest impact and return on investment. So when we're isolating the commute modes, we use the postal codes that were provided in the baseline survey, and we map them in conjunction with the regular commute mode. This exercise shows us clusters of different commuters from different areas. In correlation with these mapping exercises, we also take a look at the markets that we group based on geography, attitudes, and behaviors. This will help us estimate the uptake of programming and allows us to further develop our marketing strategy to ensure that we satisfy all of our markets. One of the most successful and results-driven programs that Smart Commute offers is our Carpool Zone website, which is our online ride matching website. Each Smart Commute partner has a dedicated group on carpoolzone.ca where employees can find coworkers with similar schedules and routes to share the ride to work with. Through the baseline survey, we're able to take a closer look at the types of incentives that respondents have indicated as being top motivators when looking at carpooling as a feasible option. As you can see on this slide, the majority of respondents from this one particular work site state that help in finding suitable people to share the ride with as a top motivator, followed by the flexible working arrangements and flexibility to carpool or vanpool occasionally. By having a clear indication of the key motivators, as well as an illustrated cluster of the SOB commuters, we're able to aim both our programming and our marketing efforts to a specific target market, which is one of the most important aspects of our marketing strategy. So one of the programs that we have that complements our Carpool Zone website is a van pool that we started with one of the leading employers in the GTHA called Direct Energy. We wanted to service the employees that were traveling from outside of the city limits, so we decided to create this van pool. So we did a preliminary analysis which showed a cluster of 15 employees that made the trip from Mississauga to the head office in Toronto. It's about a 52-mile round trip, which can take approximately 2 hours in total. Smart Commute proposed a 9-person van pool to be implemented at the head office, and after a comprehensive business case was made, the van pool was actually implemented. So once we had the van, it was our job to fill it up. This proved to be a lot more difficult than we had originally had thought. One of the major lessons that we learned from implementing this program was that what people say that they are willing to do is not actually what they will do, especially when it comes down to getting out of their cars. After realizing this, we reviewed the data to find out what was actually preventing commuters from using this van pool as a regular commute mode. In our minds, a van pool was a cost-efficient and convenient way to get to and from work. We envisioned the van pool as a way to escape from the daily stresses of driving alone and traffic. Ultimately, we envisioned the van pool as freedom. But what did the employees envision? Unfortunately, the exact opposite. While 46% of all staff said yes when asked if they would consider van pooling to and from work, only a fraction of that of those respondents actually responded to our initial correspondence trying to seek out riders. Employees liked the idea of sharing the ride to work, but in all actuality, employees were convinced that their car represented freedom, not a van pool. To get past this perceived barrier, Smart Commute implemented the Emergency Ride Home program at Direct Energy. So as you probably know, ERH is promoted as a commuter insurance to help assure people who use a sustainable mode, like van pooling, that if an emergency arises, Smart Commute has them covered. After posters and electronic communications were sent out explaining ERH, our team hosted multiple outreaches, including lunch and learns and desk drops, where we personally visited all employees to chat about the regular commute, about the ERH program, and also the new van pool. By building awareness of both ERH and Smart Commute, employees became more comfortable with the idea of leaving their cars at home and using the van pool as the regular commute mode. We became an integral part of the corporate culture, which led to a successful van pool program, as well as a thriving TDM program overall. Continuing to work with our partners and going more in depth with our survey analysis allows us to build successful, targeted, and engaging programs that truly enable behavior change. Without survey efforts and the resulting data, our TDM programming would be promoted through a blanketed marketing approach, which through experience we found to be much less successful than a targeted approach. Survey data influenced our marketing efforts by helping us target a key audience and promote a customized program based on their needs. Once the program is underway, it's also equally important to conduct an evaluation through user feedback surveys. The photos in this slide illustrate our corporate shuttle program, which we piloted last year with 5 employees in a Consumer Road business park type of area. We surveyed employees from each of the participating businesses to find out what would motivate them to leave their cars at home and take the shuttle from the nearest subway station to the front door of their office. We found that almost all employees drove to work because they believed that making the connection from the subway to a public bus, then walking to work, was too time-consuming and difficult, which in all honesty, it really was, especially in Canada when the winters are quite cold and snowy. So we tailored our marketing and advertising strategy to focus on the ease and accessibility of the shuttle. After getting the commuters on board, we continued to survey riders approximately every 3 months to find out how the service was working for them. And we also wanted to know how they were commuting beforehand and if we were actually getting those people out of cars and onto public transit. This evaluation helped us transition the shuttle from a pilot project to a full-time Smart Commute TDM program. Oops, sorry. So by partnering with some of the GTHA's leading companies, we've been able to access thousands of opinions from commuters in our region. One of the most important lessons we've learned is that a one-size-fits-all marketing campaign and a marketing approach does not work well when influencing behavior change. TMAs need to use the data that they've collected to develop tailored marketing campaigns. They need to engage commuters through discussion and debate. Essentially, TDM isn't black and white, and we need to provide commuters with the opportunity to explore those gray areas. I was reading a book a couple weeks ago, and I found this quote that I thought was pretty relatable to this presentation. So George Lois, who was a legendary admin from the 1960s, once said that creativity can solve almost any problem. The creative act, the defeat of habit by originality, overcomes everything. In our case, the habit is driving alone. The problem is traffic congestion. And I think that the first step towards creativity is collecting the appropriate kind of data, which is what all TMAs need to do. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. I was like, it's going to be a long conference for so long since I'm getting started. As I pull up my presentation here really quick, once again, I'm Ryan Ellis with the Atlanta Regional Commission. I am going to go through all this. I don't have any music in my book.
You've exceeded your time limit. That's stage.
Take a rope to me. I did my karaoke last night, so if you can't hear me in the back of the room, it's because I'm a very prolific singer. So how many of you attended the session this morning, the breakfast? Okay, so we know who slept in and who didn't now. But other than that, the keynote speaker today had a slide up there, and I'll censor it a little bit for the video here today, but he said data ticks us off. We need a story to tell. I thought that was very compelling leading into our session here today because all of us have a lot of data. How many run a regional logging system or commuter logging system? A lot of folks, so you're inundated with data on a regular basis. How many have an incentive program that may, cash incentives, any of those? So we get a lot of information. We know, where they work. We may do survey methodology as well. So how do we sit back and how do we use that data in a way that enhances our programs and brings us to the next level as our world's kind of evolving? So today I'm going to talk about two different ways in which we're trying to do that through market segmentation. And I'll bring you through that. But before we get started, you probably see this very colorful slideshow behind me. It says Georgia Commute Options. So if any of you have been familiar with the Clean Air Campaign or the practices of the local TMAs in the Atlanta region, we've recently gone through a rebranding where we have an umbrella now. Our umbrella of those services is called Georgia Commute Options. How did we get that? We actually did focus groups, data mining, survey methodology. So actually this new brand came from efforts like we'll talk about here today. So the first one I want to talk about is anybody familiar with Prism market segmentation? Okay, a few hands here and there. Over the last few years that I've been in TDM in the Atlanta region, this is something that has become more and more valuable, this information that we get on a regular basis. So if you're not familiar with the program, first of all, we have a $3 a day cash incentive program in Metro Atlanta. That $3 a day program pays you up to $100 as you log your commutes. This is our switcher program. And so what we wanted to do is really do an analysis of who's participating in those programs so that we could better understand that audience. And and what we did is we took data from a certain period of time and we ran it through a system called Prism. And I'll bring you through that here in just a moment, what Prism is. But if you're unfamiliar with market segmentation, it's a way to go in and see how basically, to know about buying. So I'm participating in these programs, so what do you know? You may know where I work, you may know where I live, but what do you actually know about me? And through this, we're able to kind of get to that. So what we do is we actually look at where you live. Because think about it, why did you choose the home that you chose? Why did you move to that school district? There's certain reasons. So the person who is your neighbor, you share some kind of common bond. You may say, oh no, my neighbor's crazy. But you move to that specific community for certain reasons. That might be a likelihood. So we're bringing that idea of the neighborhood represents a unique lifestyle. Then the Nielsen company, if you all are familiar with Nielsen, and actually Nick told a really good story about Target. Nielsen collects data on what we consume on a regular basis. So you all might be familiar with what we watch on TV. There's the Nielsen boxes, and you get your ratings from that. But they also collect a wealth of data as well too. So the information from Target, from your CVS cards, all those ways in which they personally identify you, it's all resold in general terms. So this information is out there so we can learn more about you. And there's two kind of ideas about that. So we know this information, we know where you live. Birds of a feather flock together. So, again, that concept of you are like your neighbor, you are like those people in your community. You share certain values, and you're put into these clusters or these certain groups. So why do we do this? Prism is about taking a look at what you have here today and how you get to the new. So how do we get to those commuters that would be interested in the programs, and then how do we get them hooked? What is the thing that makes them want to participate? So once we identify who those folks are, we put them into kind of this idea of a cluster, this concept of them, how do we get them in and completely understand? So the Prism, which is run by Nielsen once again, has 64 of these different kind of interesting things, interesting clusters which they'll group you in. So all of us fit into that 64. So they take the US Census data, they take that Target data and so on, and they come up with these buckets because on average we can all fit into them, either based off of the median income, we based off of it, based off the things in which we consume. So for instance, if you're interested in a wrestling magazine versus Condé Nast magazine or Designer Digest or something like that, there's a core audience for that, and that core audience typically lives and works in the same area. So for those folks who can't see the way back, what Nielsen does when you give it data, it pumps out and says, okay, here's where all of those folks of that data index. So we did that with our $3 a day program. We went in and we said, tell us about the people which are actually participating in this cash incentive program. And so there's interesting little things that it puts you in. There's one up here that is actually not up here right now, but it's pickup trucks and guns, for instance.
Not a high level participation.
Maybe not. Maybe not your core that you go to. Pools and patios, empty nesters, kids in cul-de-sacs, beltway boomers. So they have these funny little names to it. It's really for you all who are doing the market analysis. This is not something you publish out and say, guess what, you're a shotgun and pickup truck. These are things in which we kind of collect the data and be able to put people into pools. So we did this for the $3 a day program. And out of it, we realized, this is Metro Atlanta. No, this isn't the traffic patterns if you're familiar with Atlanta. This is actually where those people that participate in those $3 a day programs live. I like to call it kind of like a ring of fire because the urban core is right here in the middle. So we said, okay, this is where our core group is coming from. What kind of attributes do they have? So we broke it out, and they actually fall into these different attributes. So for instance, city commuters, solo suburbanites, town travelers, family wagon. And you can see there's certain aspects that started to rise to the top. So our city commuters, which we kind of found out through all of this, is you'll notice they're upper income. They're folks that are interested in this program which pays them to change their commute, but they're doing pretty good. Why are they interested in it? So we have a median age in here that kind of spans across each other, 35 to 54, 45 to 54. So they're all working age, middle age, they're all the wealthy income. So, what's really drawing those to those people? And, you might not be able to read this in the back, but basically the audience is predominantly affluent households. That 2/3 of those households have children. They're mixed between single or married. But the biggest thing that they were interested in participating in this program was that saving money is less of a matter of a need for them in this program, but they're being smart and savvy savers. So they're folks that say, I need to plan for my retirement. That 401k is not going to get it all for me. I need to, think about where I spend all of those dollars. And they're primarily women. And the women are making most of the decisions in the household. So they are saying, I think we need to put this money away for, either the retirement aspect, to pay for that kid's uniform that we're going to need in 3 weeks, those sorts of things. So we were kind of surprised when we looked at this over the years. And now we have done this probably every 3 to 4 years in Metro Atlanta. The Clean Air Campaign, which leads this effort, they actually have done the segmentation and do an analysis on it. Come back, and it hasn't shifted too much for us. We find that this is still our core audience. But it brings up some other things. Well, why aren't we reaching another audience? Are we not saying the right things? So it started to kind of bring up some thoughts, and I'll get that to you here in a minute. Now, I know not all markets are able to do mass media, but in Metro Atlanta, we're able to do a mass media message. And we go out and actually do a media buy, and that media buy is based off that Prism data. So we go, okay, of the radio stations in Metro Atlanta, what speaks to women in this age group, which has this kind of income level, that we can get that message? And what is the message that we say out to it? So is it a humorous message? Is it an educational message? Does it talk about money? Does it talk about the environment? And as we saw, it's more of a money discussion, but it's a money savings discussion. And so we identified certain radio stations that do that in Metro Atlanta that have similar demographics listening. So once again, that Nielsen data all comes into play, so this has an interesting kind of segue into it. And just recently, we've started doing media buys with Pandora. Pandora's kind of arisen to the top over the last few years to be the predominant internet radio streaming. Many of you listen, yes? Do you remember when you sign up, you either connect through social media or you put in some information? Well, that helps actually with this process. The ad that you receive might be different than the ad I receive on that Pandora radio station. Even if we're listening to the same station and we just heard the same song, there's difference. It's about the demographics in which you put in. So if you put in your home zip code or you give them information, I can actually go buy information for you specifically. So I know that you're likely to change your commute behavior or you're likely to participate in this cash incentive program. I can send it to you. I can say, this is why you should do it, and hopefully it rings a bell with you. And you either click through to go out through the website or you remember it and you have that retention, that brand retention. And that's something, especially as we're launching the Georgia Commute options, we're moving from one regional brand to another. How do we make sure that we're doing this target focus on that? So I just gave you an idea of one methodology and one route to do that, and one kind of company to go through. So one was Nielsen and their Prism, the name of it is. You could actually do a mini Prism on yourself right now. Any of you who have laptops or tablets in front of you, you can go to mybestsegments, all one word, .com. And on there you can put in your zip code for where you live, and it will give you a very, very mini kind of Prism analysis on yourself. You'll find that it spits out a bunch. It doesn't give you the highest thing that indexes there. For instance, it told me that I really like WWE magazine. I don't like it. But there is a population within where I live in suburban Atlanta that is interested in that. It's not ranking it towards the top. So all 64 clusters may be in your area, but it's not going to give you the index because basically it's just saying here's a bunch that were in your area. You got to pay us to get all the rest. So from the Prism information, myself and my boss were sitting around one day and we were talking about how do we take this information to the next level? How do we use this on a regular basis? And cost is always an issue for everyone. I know everyone can say that here in this room. I don't have a lot of money to keep mining data. But if any of you are linked to an MPO or use Esri or have an Esri license, there's a plugin called the Business Analysis, and it actually includes a feature which is called Tapestry. Tapestry is the same thing as Prism. They use census data mixed with information like the consumer behavior information. Now, it's a different company that provides that consumer behavior information. It's not Nielsen that does that. But it's getting you to the same type of information. So we went to our folks, we're lucky enough to have a whole research team within the Atlanta MPO, and we said, how can we better inform this process that we're doing every single day. So instead of just this mass media message, how do we start to tell the story to the individual commuters? How do we have that pamphlet at the table that we have the, our regional TMAs or ESOs standing at? How do we start to get to that level so that we get away from, oh, please just sign up, or here, there's this incentive, or guaranteed ride home. How about we say, we know we give a guaranteed ride home last at this company because we know that they're more interested in this versus this. How do we get them into this program versus this program? So we started to look at that, and we thought we'd use Tapestry to kind of first put our feet in the water. And right now, if anybody been to Atlanta? Anybody stuck in Atlanta traffic? Yes, thank you. You should raise your hand twice, I feel like. So in Atlanta, we have the very infamous State Route 400 that runs right through kind of the urban core and takes you all the way out to Alpharetta, which is a huge employment center that is just kind of sprung up. And there's a 50-cent toll on there. Well, that 50-cent toll is soon to go away. Shocking, the toll going away, but it was a promise when the road was built that they would eliminate this toll once the bonds were paid off. Well, if many of you were in Savannah last year, you remember the Atlanta region did not pass a transportation T-SPLOS that we were hoping for, so you saw a lot of sad faces among the TDM community in Savannah last year. But during that, they announced, we're getting rid of the toll. Well, with that, everybody is obviously very happy as a commuter, but for the TDM community, how do we start to talk about this? Because we're actually finding that there's going to be an 18 to 20% increase in traffic through that system. So a lot of people think toll going down, that's great, this is going to make my commute awesome. It's kind of the reverse. They're also adding 2 ramps at within a month that dump off from I-85 better into 400, where before you kind of had to use some of the surface streets to reconnect those. And so there's going to be better connectivity, and that's also factored into this process. So we said, as a TDM community, we really need to get in front of this. We need to start talking about this, tell people, be proactive, get out there and say to them, you think your commute's going to be different? It's really going to be a little bit more intense. And how do we start talking about that? So here's just some ideas here, and for those who know Atlanta very well, this is 400 toll. As it is today, this is what it will turn into after that toll comes down. Just after the new year, they're going to start actually in November removing some signage. Over Thanksgiving, or right after Thanksgiving, they'll remove the toll, and then shortly after that, they'll start deconstructing actually the toll booth. So there will be some congestion in that area just from construction, people trying to find their natural way through that system. And we find also surprising that it had an Easy Pass system on it. Most of those folks were going through the Easy Pass. They really liked actually stopping and talking to the toll booth folks. So we're seeing, that could be an opportunity to hand out some materials as that toll booth comes down. A lot of great stories to tell apparently from the toll booths though. People know when people are sick apparently. They said like, oh, Ryan's not working the toll booth, where is he today? So, once again, this kind of piggybacks on what I was saying. How do we kind of create that custom messaging to those folks that are impacted by the 400 toll booth? What messages will appeal to them? We do various different types of messaging now, but how do we start morphing? Is it this money question? Is it something like, for Dump the Pump, where we had something about gas, like, with this cobweb feature? Do we bring in a van pool concept in here? How do we start talking about it? So we went within the MPO and went over to our research guys, once again, that run our model to talk about what the system's going to look like. So this is a projection. It's very kind of hard to see from the back, but I hope to illustrate it for you. This is through 2015. And we said, all right, give us an idea where the most amount of trips will be happening that go through that toll booth through the year 2015, and they were able to highlight these areas. So there's dark reds, kind of lighter pinks, and then in some areas, there's nothing at all, meaning those folks there's not trips coming through the tolls at that period. So we said, great, we have our data now, we have where people live, what can we do?
Where's the highway on that?
So, this is 400 right here. Great question. So we went back, again, this is, we used the Esri system for Tapestry. These are the data sources that it uses. I'm sure there's Esri folks here that can also talk about those data sources to more detail than I could. We plugged it in the system, and it gave us this map, this very colorful map. What this means is, remember those, like 64 different groups? That represented throughout, in a color representation. What it was able to do, it spat out the demographics for us, so we can see, the typical age of the commuter coming through, or coming through the toll booths, so in those highest amount of trip areas. It gives us the ethnicity breakdown. This is just the same thing, age represented in a different way, race in a different way, income levels. So, it gives us the breakdown once again so that we can start to talk that message. What does that person look like? What can I say about the person who travels down that route? And then again, here's the segments. So we realized that the most amount of folks are metro renters. So there's a lot, large rental population. They're typically young, educated singles, just starting their career. We can say that they like to buy clothes. I put this as of interest, to buy clothes at Banana Republic, Gap, Nordstrom, regularly work out. So what does that say to us? Probably a health message may kind of link to them. They like to go to karaoke night. I saw a lot of people outside of this demographic doing karaoke last night. They live in politically liberal neighborhoods. This goes back to what Nick was talking about with the last campaign. This was the type of information that they used to be able to say who's likely to vote for this candidate. This is the type of stuff that they're able to get. Median household income at $56,000. So not really our typical target with our cash incentives program, so we can't necessarily use that same type of messaging. We'll have to repackage it if that's something that we look at. And again, we go down and there's these different groupings. When you go out to My Best Segments, you'll be able to see some of those little bit of details. If you go to Esri's website, they'll even give you like a poster that has kind of a breakdown of these groups too as well. What's also neat is, since we have access to this and it only costs us our licensing money at the MPO, as we said, let's take it to the next level. So the slide before was the idea of everybody in that along 400, those most trips. Well, can we get down to another level? So we were able to go down to the zip code level. So what if we wanted to target, we have numerous TMAs in the Atlanta area, so some of them cover different zip codes and things like that. So we could get to one TMA and say, hey, here, for your zip code areas that are impacted by 400, here's the messaging. Let's talk about building messaging around it. So we really want to be able to help our TMA and our ESO partners too and say, hey, help us, give us the data, we can run it through the tapestry through licensing that we do there as well. So as I wrap up here today, think about it, how can this process, what can we do with big data? How can we mine it away to get to the messages that relate to our commuters, the everyday messaging? I mean, this could be talking points at a table for somebody, if you think about it. We all get objections when we stand at a table or we're giving presentations. I can't do it because. Well, what if you knew that person more in depth than they thought, and you could actually talk to them and say, well, based off of this area, have you thought about biking to work because, maybe it's a health conscious area, it's a very active center, things like that. What do your materials say? Maybe every time you go to an employer, the materials are a little bit different based off of where they are. Maybe since you did surveys like we talked about before, you kind of know where their commuters are coming from. So these are the ideas that we're trying to get more targeted, to make better use of our day-to-day labor and time and hours. So if we spend some time mining data, that we'll be able to get to our next level. So with that, thank you all.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up the presentation by giving you some background information on the DC market. And just to give you a little bit of background on Commuter Connections, we have about 2.7 million workers in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, and one of the things that our focus has been on is the reduction of vehicle trips and vehicle miles of travel, as well as emission reductions. And we're housed at the MPO, and our board has basically adopted emission reduction measures. And so, based on that, we've developed we needed to have a framework in order to move forward on a communications message. Because one of the measures that was adopted was a mass marketing reduction measure. And so as part of that, I have a few copies here, so for those of you that are interested, feel free to get these, and they're also online. We basically put together a framework to determine what types of data do we need to collect in order to be able to reach that market and to be able to get those folks to change their travel behavior. And so one of the ways we do that is through our State of the Commute survey. It's a triennial survey. I have copies here in the front and in the back. We survey about 6,500 households in the region to basically determine what are the attitudes and awareness of commute options, how can people change their travel behavior, and what are the trigger points that we could use in those marketing messages. We also collect information through our applications, through our emails, calls received in our call center, as well as overall demographics from a whole host of information that we collect through our Guaranteed Ride Home program, our Pool Rewards program, as well as our Van Pool Incentive program. And then from that, we're able to basically come up with transportation and emission impacts. And I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty in terms of the data that we collect, because I could be here all day to talk about that. You know, I think our three panelists explained a lot of what's going on, and we use a lot of the same methods. But what I want to show you is what comes out of that data and what we can actually project out to the public. So overall, our objectives are to convert SOV commuters. We want to also retain the existing commuters because we have very high transit use in the DC market, as well as carpool and van pool use. And we have over 25% of our labor force is teleworking at least a day and a half a week. So again, we're looking to reduce VT, as well as vehicle emissions. So as part of this, we have an ad agency. It's the O'Donnell Company, and I'm going to be basically upfront and tell you that I've stolen all of their slides because I'm not going to recreate them. But they have basically worked with us to take this data that we have and basically formulate our campaigns. And we have a rideshare Guaranteed Ride Home campaign, as well as a Pool Rewards campaign and a Bike to Work Day campaign. So the strategy for the rideshare campaign is rideshare for real. We wanted to differentiate Commuter Connections as the trusted regional provider of ride matching. And this is from data that we've received back through our State of the Commute, that people know about our programs, they know who we are. We have over 30,000 commuters in our database, and we want to focus on long-term matching through this campaign. And so our overall focus was to seek more audience engagement, and the message is Commuter Connections offers real people who want to share rides and save real money. We had a very focused geographic emphasis on our middle and outer ring communities. These are folks that have longer commutes, distance and time, and they have fewer public transportation options. And the media that we looked at was radio, TV, online banner ads, and promotions. I'm hoping this is going to work. We did do a TV commercial. Unfortunately, it's not going to work, so we'll skip that. But we also have radio. You can barely hear this. So anyway, unfortunately, we don't have audio here, but we did do TV and radio. We also, I just wanted to point out, we also segmented our market. We focused on the Hispanic market, and we teamed up with some of the Spanish radio stations in the region, and then we also had very specific messages to the African American community as well, because those were important demographics for us. We did team up with some of the stations to do banner ads. These are all online, and we were able to also negotiate an additional 30% of our buy with what's called value-added sponsorships, and that was through traffic tags, bonus spots, live traffic reads, as well as impressions on websites that were in our media buy. So these are some of the banner ads that we did for the Spanish stations, as well as one of our outer jurisdictional stations in Frederick. We also teamed up with our local transit agencies to basically get them to donate space on their vehicles. So we were able to basically print all of the ads for those vehicles and get them placed on various transit properties. And there were probably about 8 different transit properties in our region. And so here are some samples. This is from Montgomery County in Maryland. We also, just going back to what Ryan said, we did a direct mail piece to about 500,000 households in the region, and this is based on a Prism analysis that we had done. Except we went through Claritas, so I don't know if they were bought out by Nielsen. Okay, so that's probably what happened. And it was an eye-opener for us because we took our existing database and we were able to basically project out who are the folks that are actually coming to us and then reach out to those communities and get them to hear our message through the direct mail. And the interesting thing about the direct mail is that we're probably getting about a 2%, close to a 2% return, but a lot of it is coming through the website and not through the paper copies. We get a lot of paper copies, but the majority of the folks were basically just going right online. And I'll show you a little bit later. I have a graph that kind of shows you what the bump is from that mail piece. So switching to the Guaranteed Ride Home campaign, our whole message here is don't get left dangling. And the strategy is to talk about ride-sharing options and the fact that Guaranteed Ride Home is a safety net. And so we had quick and frequent reads by really good radio personalities during the campaign, and we had it during drive time, which is you're going to get the highest effectiveness. And essentially we wanted to get the message out that, you know, if you're on the fence, if you sign up for Guaranteed Ride Home, you're not going to get stranded if you get into one of these shared options. And so, again, there was a geographic emphasis, but this time we focused on the inner core community to get the message out, and we primarily used radio as our medium. And I'm not going to go through these, but these are some live reads that we did for the campaign, and then we also had some banner ads. And then also we had value add. Again, got about 18% of our overall buy. We got about $25,000 worth of free ads through the purchase. Again, we had some banner ads, and then we worked with bus shelters in various communities to get bus shelter ads up, and then donated bus space again through our local transit agencies. And again, we did a direct mail piece. So the interesting thing in this is our media schedule, and as you can see, we have different media going on for Guaranteed Ride Home as well as rideshare. And this is purposely done because what we do is we want to go back and we can look at every specific week to see what is the response rate, and we can actually go back and calculate impacts for that week. So we don't put everything out there at the same time. So we're able to go back and when we do our final analysis, and I have a final analysis report here, we're able to separate out the benefits and the impacts for each of the programs. Again, we had some special events that were going on that are kind of tied into our marketing campaign. One of the things that we did is our Pull Rewards Street Team program, as well as we have a very successful Bike to Work Day event. And we also recognize employers in the region for their efforts through an awards campaign that we do. So on the Pull Rewards campaign, we wanted to increase the likelihood of finding a ride match for folks that are interested in carpooling. And we basically had a contest for our employee transportation coordinators, and the prize was to basically get a radio-hosted social event at the site that won. And then we also had street teams that basically were wearing branded polos. We had events that were transportation-based events that large employers had in the region, and we wanted to share the benefits with those folks attending the events on the Pull Rewards campaign. We had a lot of different giveaways, and we were able to really pump up the event prior to each of the on-site events. So here are some photos. This is at the federal, at the FDA in Maryland, and these were some of the branding that we did. We did chocolates. It says "Bite Off Commute Dollars," We had some polos for the street team folks, and then we also had a bag that we put together. And then this is the poster contest that we had to basically promote the office party at the employer site. We also had wrap cards that we distributed to all the employers that we felt would fit into this program. And essentially the campaign was fairly successful. We were able to boost participation by about 25% from what we saw earlier in the year. Next, I'm going to just talk a little bit about our Bike to Work Day event in 2013. Our goal was to promote bicycling as a viable commute option. We wanted to build the regional participation in the event and to encourage employer engagement as well as participation and sponsorship of the event. And we use social media as one of the ways to get folks involved. So we developed poster and wrap cards, a t-shirt, we had banners at each of our pit stops, we used social media, radio, we had placed media as well as print ads in the Washington Post Express. We had a record-breaking cash total of almost $50,000 this year for corporate sponsorship, which is about a 6.5% increase over last year. And then we had about another $17,000 or so dollars in in-kind sponsorship, which has exceeded last year's total by about 13%. And these are some of our sponsors. Actually, these are all of our sponsors for the program. We had varying levels of sponsorship, bronze, silver, and gold. And we also produced a radio spot, which I know is not going to work, so I'm not going to play it for you. But we did posters in English and Spanish. We also had a wrap card that we distributed out to all of the bicycling shops throughout the entire metro region, and also to employers. And this is our newspaper ad that went into the Washington Post Express. And we have a dedicated website for the event that we coordinate with the Washington Area Bicyclists Association, and a Twitter account, as well as Facebook. And we also had a very strong earned media program as part of this. And we had a lot of media interest in the event, and we also were able to do live interviews. I will tell you that some of those interviews were at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I did not relish having to get up at 3:30 to be at a station at 5 a.m., but that was part of the deal. And so here are some of the exposure that we were able to get through the TV. We also had some blogs. A lot of folks took to their own personal blogs or company blogs. We even had Ray LaHood. As you can see right here, this is the USDOT website, and he actually used our graphic, which we felt very pleased about, and he blogged about Bike to Work Day. And we had DC Mayor Vincent Gray come out to one of our pit stops, as well as one of the DC council members, Tom Wells, was also there. And as you can see, lots of event. We have people that collect our t-shirts each year, and they bring them out and display them at the event. We had a lot of giveaways, and our attendance rose again this year, up 20%. We had over 70 pit stops this year, and about 14,600 registrants. So it's a banner year for Bike to Work Day. And down here is Ray LaHood with USDOT employees. So he actually got into the act as well. And as you can see, this is one of our pit stops. This is Freedom Plaza. So we had a lot of cyclists that were participating. And of course, good weather helps. If you don't have good weather, usually it doesn't work. As you can see, the event has grown tremendously. I went back to 2006, and each year it just keeps getting larger and larger. And with that comes the challenge of being able to have a budget to be able to accommodate. Because the more people you have, the more giveaways you need to have, the more T-shirts you need to have. So it's kind of a conundrum as you move forward from the financial side. So bottom line is, we have a lot of results, and I could probably spend the rest of the day talking about results, but I just want to show you some quick graphs here. I went back 3 years. We've been doing these mass marketing campaigns for over a decade now. But as you can see, whenever we do a direct mail piece, so for instance, last spring we did a direct mail piece, and so we had a bump in terms of the rideshare applications. And then, as the fall months come along, our campaign usually starts about right here, and then we do another mailer, and here we are again here. So you can see there's a direct correlation with how you segment your marketing and your target, and being able to get the results that you're looking for. And then this also translates, and we take all of this information and translate it into impacts. And again, this is for our guaranteed ride home applicants. And so looking ahead, we are collecting data for 2013. We have a new State of the Commute survey that's going to be coming out. Each year we produce a marketing brief that outlines what our strategy is going to be, and we're basically going to take that information and plug it into a new campaign, a new target market. We kind of look at what we've done this past year and figure out where we need to make tweaks in order to continue the program in a successful manner. We have a newsletter that goes out to employers just to kind of reinforce all of the messaging. We have Car Free Day coming up in the fall. I didn't really talk about that, but that's an international event that we celebrate in the DC market. Our pool rewards campaign is going to continue. We're going to make some shifts on that in terms of, based on our results from this past spring, in terms of who we want to target and what employers we want to target. And then we'll be rolling out our campaign probably in December of this year. And then that'll flow into next spring. So with that, I'm more than happy to open it up to questions for the entire panel. And what I'm going to do is, when you ask the question, I'm just going to repeat it so we get it on our recording. And then I'd like to ask the speakers just to project as loudly as you can. Maybe pretending you're at a football game and you're yelling so that the folks in the back can hear. So questions? Yeah, back there.
Rachelle, yeah.
Rachelle.
I'm wondering if your TDMI goes to the 13 you were speaking about, is there an ordinance or some type of TDM requirement that requires employers to work with their TDM?
So the question was for Rachelle if there's an ordinance requiring employers to work with Smart Commute.
There is not, but we have found that with recent developments, specifically if someone's building a property, just say a mall or a subdivision, we find that the regional municipalities tell the developers to contact Smart Commute to help with their lead certification. Asher, who I think is in the crowd, he works with York Region, he might be able to give you a bit more information on that aspect of it. We do find that a lot of companies contact us. It depends. There's some companies that contact us with regards to their CSR. It's more of a PR kind of program that they want to promote. Whereas we've had companies contact us if they're relocating. So we've had RBC Bank contact us. They were moving about 2,000 employees from a downtown core to uptown Toronto. So people were taking GO Transit, walking or cycling to the downtown core. But when they were moving uptown, they had to take up to 3 different points. So they contacted us because they wanted to retain all of their employees. So there's various options and reasons why companies do contact us, but it's not mandated.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah. Okay.
What sort of budget are you working with for all of the things that you're able to do?
Okay, so the question is what is the budget for the Commuter Connections program in DC? And so our overall budget for our entire annual work program is about $5 million. The marketing component is, I would say, probably a little less than half of that budget goes into marketing. And so our whole premise behind that is that we have to show cost effectiveness as well. So at the end, when we do this analysis, you'll see in the analysis report, we do come down to the exact dollar that we're spending in terms of every vehicle mile of travel that we reduce, every ton of emissions that we reduce, and every vehicle trip that we reduce. And so we have to show cost effectiveness. I mean, that's part of being able to get the dollars that we're getting in order to run the program. And so at the end, and I'm sure with everyone here, it's all about effectiveness. And who are you influencing, and are those dollars being used in the most effective manner? I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, in the Metro Atlanta, I can't speak for the total budget of the region. We at the MPO have a certain portion of that pot, which we use for our ride matching system. As far as kind of the market segmentation that we were talking about, a lot of the money, at least on the Prism, was for the analysis, and a third party did the analysis for that. The Esri license that we talked about in the second half, that is about a $5,000 add-on if they have the Esri system, the GIS, that whole suite of packages. As far as total media budget, I can't speak to it in total, but I know our media buy is just under $1 million to get all the radio ads, Pandora, a lot of online media that we also go to as well, do banner ads.
I will also say for the DC region, we also work with our local jurisdictions because many of the local jurisdictions have their own marketing budgets as well, so that actually contributes to the regional pot, and those dollars, I would say, are, probably just double the budget that I just gave you, and then our state DOTs also have a lot of TDM initiatives that they're doing as part of construction mitigation or other projects that they're working on, redevelopment projects that might be going on in a particular corridor. And there's some very large projects that are going on in the DC market right now. For instance, we have hot lanes that are being built, as well as a new metro line out to Dulles Airport. And so there's a lot of dollars being poured into a lot of TDM messaging throughout the region. So what we try and do is basically collaborate to make sure that our message is as regional as possibly can be, but we also are trying to target down into some of those households so we can get folks to respond and be part of our overall program.
Can I do one follow-up?
Yeah.
So you've got a larger overall budget, but could you maybe pinpoint down to, like, on a per participant or per target, like what you're spending maybe per target person?
We don't measure it in that manner because mainly it's impact on, again, vehicle trips, vehicle miles of travel, emissions, because that's really where the impetus is coming from. In terms of our board and what we have to report back, in terms of, and some of this I will say there are some federal requirements that we're meeting in terms of our air quality conformity and our congestion management process. Yeah.
So we're just getting started on this idea of coordinating regionally and getting other entities participating in it. You have some particular tools, policies, guidance, anything like that your regional planning authority or anybody else put in place that we look at?
So if you're referring to like coordination among like TMAs?
Yeah, so coordination on the TDM, how do you get kind of the DOT doing TDM as they're doing construction?
Sure.
How does that get coordinated?
So for us, we're actually there's a presentation I believe came here tomorrow that we'll be presenting. We just did a TDM plan and hired ICF as our consultant team along with Kim Horn to come up with that coordination because we weren't coordinated as a Atlanta region. We've gotten closer to that with the branding, which I mentioned, to kind of have that umbrella so that it makes the messaging easier and there's not competition for that. So we've got some good lessons learned. We're in the process of wrapping that up, and Kane's presenting that tomorrow. So I'd say definitely come into that. That's something that I think a lot of regions struggle with because since we've started talking about our plan, we've got a lot of similar phone calls to say, where are you with the plan and what best lessons can you share? But I think for us, the marketing aspect, coming up with a single brand was big, and getting buy-in for that.
Okay, one last question, Lori.
This is a question for Lisa. Lisa, right?
Yep.
In the surveys, I assume that they were all different, but they had some commonalities. Did you collect common sociodemographic or psychosocial data from these different programs, and was there a common set of variables that you were looking at across these 6 different cities?
So the question was, were the surveys different or similar across the cities, I guess? And actually,
or similar, particularly.
Yeah. And they were similar. They, in fact, almost identical. So, and those surveys, the link I showed you with the, if you go to the Segment website, it actually has the questions that we used on that. But they're very much general attitudinal questions, therefore very applicable to all life change moments and all cities.
Okay, one last question. Yes.
Ryan, I know that you, when you were looking at your different segments, you were also looking at political leaning. And I'm wondering if you ever used that portion of the segment to try to guide policy change or policy direction.
Go ahead.
Did everybody get the question? Okay, one of the areas that I guess one of the segments was political leanings, and was that particular area used to drive any of the messages?
Yeah, so to directly answer you, no, but we have seen what is coming out of this information, and our TDM group within the MPO is the only one mining the data this way. And so we are trying to enlighten the rest of the MPO to say, look, there's a process you can go through. For instance, could we have help with messaging for the T-SPLOST a little bit differently in Metro Atlanta to help with that type of policy discussion? We are now very active in getting in front of the MPO board, which is obviously made up of local political leaders, to inform them of these programs and how we're going about that, so that we can later have the conversation to say, hey, there's this segmentation methodology that you can start to do to better do public engagement with. So the light bulb has come on, now we need to kind of apply it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the session. There are evaluation forms that are being distributed, so please take some time to fill those out. And I also would like to give a big hand to our panelists.